The village of Bright Waters lay cradled between green hills and a lake so clear that it caught the sky's reflection like polished glass. At dawn, the fishermen's canoes sliced the water into ripples of silver, and by evening, the children's laughter echoed along the banks where the reeds swayed gently in the breeze. The villagers said the lake was a mirror to the heavens, and that spirits of ancestors often leaned down to watch their descendants through its surface. In this village, marriage was not only a joining of two hearts but also a covenant witnessed by the lake itself. No wedding was complete without a ring forged from metals blessed in secret by the elders. The ring was more than ornament, it was a promise bound by ancestral prayers. To wear such a ring was to carry both honor and responsibility, for it was believed the lake would guard those whose vows were true and expose those whose hearts were false. Among the villagers lived a young woman named Nyana. She was neither the richest nor the most adorned, but there was a gentleness in her that made even the old women smile when she passed. Her voice carried like a song when she greeted her neighbors, and her hands, though calloused from weaving mats and tending the hearth, moved with grace. It was said she could calm a crying child with a single touch, and when she laughed, it was as though the morning birds found reason to sing a little brighter. Nyana was soon to be married. Her betrothed, Adissa, was a strong young farmer whose fields stretched wide with yams and groundnuts. Unlike some men, Adissa did not boast of his strength, but his eyes shone with quiet determination. He had asked for Nyana's hand not with loud declarations but with steady devotion, and the elders approved of him. Their wedding had been spoken of for moons, and the village buzzed with excitement as the day drew near. The elders had already begun the sacred work of crafting the wedding ring. For 3 nights they fasted and prayed by the fire. On the 4th night they melted the metals, gold, copper and iron, each one carrying a different blessing, wealth, endurance and protection. They whispered chants as sparks flew, and when the ring cooled, it was polished until it gleamed with a warmth unlike any other jewel. Nyana had only glimpsed the ring once, when the eldest woman held it up to the moon. The sight of it made her chest swell with both joy and humility. This ring, she thought, was not simply for her finger, it was the weight of her ancestors' love and the symbol of her people's trust. She vowed she would wear it with honor, never letting pride stain its shine. As the days passed, preparations filled every corner of the village. Women pounded grain for the great feast, men gathered palm wine, and children rehearsed songs they would sing during the wedding procession. Nyana's stepmother, a stern woman whose eyes seemed always to search for fault, oversaw the weaving of Nyana's wedding cloth. Her stepsister, Sephu, helped too, though her smiles often carried a shadow behind them. Nyana, ever kind, did not dwell on the bitterness she sometimes felt in her sister's gaze. She only hoped the wedding would bring joy to all. Every evening Nyana walked to the lake's edge, where she whispered prayers into the water. She asked for a marriage blessed with peace, for strength to be a good wife, and for harmony within her family. The lake shimmered in reply, and though she could not hear the words, she believed the ancestors had listened. None in the village of Bright Waters could know that this very lake, so pure, so faithful, would one day bear witness to betrayal, envy, and the strange power of a ring that refused to be stolen. In every household, the hearth warms those who gather near it, but not every flame gives comfort. In Nyana's home, warmth often turned to ash beneath the eyes of her stepmother and stepsister. Her stepmother, Mama Sephu, had married Nyana's father after her mother's passing, and though she tended the house with diligence, her heart carried more stones than tenderness. The softer Nyana shone, the more those stones pressed upon her chest, making her words sharp and her glances cold. Sephu, the stepmother's only daughter, had grown up beside Nyana. Where Nyana's beauty was quiet, like dawn spreading across the lake, Sephu's beauty was sharp, like sunlight striking a blade. She was striking indeed, with dark eyes that caught attention quickly, but envy grew in her like thorns hidden under a flower. When neighbors greeted Nyana with fondness, Sephu felt her skin burn. When elders praised Nyana's modesty, Sephu's teeth ground in silence. Now, with Nyana's wedding drawing near, the envy flared like dry grass meeting fire. The village hummed with excitement, yet in their home, tension wound itself tight as rope. At night, when the house grew still, Sephu lay awake staring at the thatched roof above her. She could not stop the pictures forming in her mind. Nyana draped in fine cloth, Nyana wearing the sacred ring, Nyana receiving blessings before the whole village. Each vision gnawed at her like hunger. Mama Sephu did little to soothe her daughter's bitterness. In truth, she fanned it. Sitting by the hearth, she would mutter just loud enough for Sephu to hear, "It is strange, is it not? Your father's land, his wealth, his name, all flowing toward the daughter who is not mine. And you, my only child, left to stand in her shadow. The words slid easily into Sefu's heart, planting roots of resentment. Soon, whispers between mother and daughter filled the nights. They spoke not openly of what they planned, but the sourness in their voices was enough to curdle the air. Nyana, though she sensed unease, carried on with gentleness. She offered her stepsister pieces of sweet fruit, saved her the finest beads when braiding, and never answered coldness with anger. Yet kindness often feels like salt to those who live on bitterness. It stings rather than heals. The inheritance of beauty and favor weighed heavily in this household. In the village, it was said a woman's blessings showed not only in her face but in the respect she commanded. Nyana's beauty was not of kohl-lined eyes or heavy jewels. It was in her patience, her humility, and her laughter that seemed to chase shadows from hearts. Sefu's beauty, though striking, grew hard with jealousy, and the more she compared herself to her sister, the more her own reflection turned into a mockery. Villagers sometimes whispered, "See how the two daughters walk together, one shining like water in sunlight, the other stormy as clouds." Such remarks, carried by careless tongues, reached Sefu's ears like nettles. Each word convinced her that fate had been unfair. Why should Nyana, who shared neither her mother's blood nor her inheritance, rise so high? Why should Sefu, who carried her mother's pride and fire, be left second in every regard? It was then the plotting began. Small thoughts at first, tiny as seeds. What if the ring did not reach Nyana's hand? What if the blessings of the elders were interrupted? Such thoughts grew quickly, watered by her mother's sighs and complaints. Together, stepmother and daughter nursed their envy like a secret sickness. Sefu's heart became a storm. She practiced her smiles before the mirror-polished calabash, smoothing her face so no one would suspect. In public, she laughed beside Nyana, weaving cloth and fetching water as if her love were genuine. But in her chest, the envy clawed for release. The wedding day approached and the weight of inheritance pressed harder. For in their village, a bride did not marry alone. Her family's honor rose or fell with her. To see Nyana honored was to see their own pride humbled. Mama Sefu and Sefu whispered more fervently now, their voices like snakes rustling in dry grass. Their eyes often lingered on the ring, still guarded by the elders, their minds tightening around schemes too dark for daylight. Nyana, unaware of the full shadow gathering around her, moved through the days with hope in her heart. She sang softly as she prepared her cloth, thinking of Odissa, of the feast, of the blessings yet to come. But the lake, ever watchful, rippled uneasily at her prayers. For though Nyana carried light, envy was already sharpening its claws in her own household. And in the silence between footsteps, in the long nights where whispers curled like smoke, Sefu's envy grew into something more dangerous than mere bitterness. It became a hunger, and hunger always seeks to devour. The village of Bright Waters rarely slept on the eve of a wedding. That night, the air was full of songs, laughter, and the sharp rhythm of drums echoing from one house to another. Children ran about with torches, their shadows stretching tall against the mud brick walls, while women prepared pots of stew, roasting meat and grinding spices until the air was thick with scents that made mouths water. Men carried benches and stools to the central courtyard, where the celebration would be held. The entire village seemed to move like a single body, pulsing with joy. In the midst of this excitement, Nyana sat quietly in her small room. A mat of woven reeds stretched beneath her, and beside her lay the wedding gown, carefully stitched by the village seamstress, its white cloth dyed faintly with the colors of lake lilies. By the doorway, a small clay lamp burned steadily, its glow soft against the night. She ran her fingers along the gown, feeling every thread, as though touching it could anchor her dreams. Her friends had gathered earlier, bringing laughter and playful teasing. They adorned her hair with beads and shells, some white, some turquoise, whispering about the husband she would wake beside after tomorrow's dawn. "You will be radiant, Nyana," one friend said, braiding her hair with practiced hands. "Even the moon will envy you." Nyana blushed and shook her head, though her smile betrayed her joy. Another friend pressed sweet cakes into her hands, insisting she eat, though her stomach fluttered too much with nerves. For a while, the room had been bright with chatter, but slowly her friends drifted away, called back to their homes by mothers and younger siblings. Soon, only Nyana remained, cradling the most precious thing she owned, the wedding ring. Forged by the village elders from metal drawn from the mountain caves, the ring bore etched patterns of waves and flame, symbols of balance and endurance. It was said that every ring carried the blessings of the ancestors, tying one generation of love to the next. Nyana held it against her heart, whispering a quiet prayer. "May this union be a river that flows strong. May it nourish, may it protect, may it never dry. Her words floated into the silence. Beyond the walls of her room, the drums continued, and voices rose in celebratory songs. Nyana set the ring gently into its small wooden box and placed it beside her mat. She stretched her limbs, preparing to rest, though her eyes lingered on the box again and again, as though afraid the treasure might slip away while she slept. But someone else's eyes were also fixed upon it. Unseen by Nyana, her stepsister Sephu stood just beyond the woven curtain that marked the doorway. She had slipped away from the laughter of the courtyard, drawn by a restless fire inside her chest. The glow of the clay lamp illuminated Nyana's profile, her serene face, her fingers combing absent-mindedly through her braided hair, her smile faint but full of expectation. Sephu's heart twisted at the sight. Why should she smile so? Why should she sit at the center of the village's joy while I remain a shadow? Sephu pressed her hand against the wall, her nails digging into the clay. She could see the box by Nyana's mat, the faint glimmer of metal peeking through its wooden frame. The ring. The source of all blessing. The symbol that tomorrow would lift Nyana above her. Jealousy gnawed at her with each passing breath. The songs outside, the sound of feet stamping the earth in rhythm, all of it felt like mockery. Each drumbeat said, Nyana will rise. Nyana will shine. Nyana will be chosen. Her lips curled. But only if she has the ring. Nyana, lost in thought, did not notice the shadow lingering. She hummed softly to herself, an old lullaby her mother used to sing. Her voice was gentle, carrying into the corridor where Sephu stood. For a moment, the sound pierced through the stepsister's envy, stirring a memory of when they were children, when Nyana once shared her only blanket with her on a cold night. The memory flickered like a dying flame, but it was not enough. Envy smothered it swiftly. When Nyana finally lay down upon her mat, pulling her cloth over her shoulders, her breathing soon softened into the rhythm of sleep. The clay lamp burned low, shadows crawling up the walls. Outside, the drums and songs carried on, but inside, silence thickened. Sephu remained still, waiting. Her eyes locked on the small wooden box. Her breath quickened, her palms grew damp. Slowly, carefully, she lifted the edge of the woven curtain. The lamplight kissed her face, highlighting the sharp lines of her envy. She stepped inside, her movements silent, though her heart thundered loud enough to drown out the distant singing. Nyana stirred in her sleep, murmuring a dreamer's word, then fell quiet again. Sephu crouched by the mat, her gaze fixed on the box. She reached out one trembling hand, her fingers brushing the polished wood. For a moment she froze, her body caught between desire and fear. Her eyes darted to Nyana's face, peaceful in slumber, then back to the box. The envy roared in her chest, louder than the drums, stronger than hesitation. Her fingers closed around it. The box lifted easily into her hand, and she opened it with a slow, careful motion. The ring glinted faintly in the dim light, its etched patterns alive with shadows. Sephu's breath caught in her throat. It was smaller than she had imagined, delicate, but its presence felt vast, as though the weight of ancestors pressed upon it. Her lips curled into a smile. At last. Without another sound, she closed the box and slipped into the darkness beyond the curtain, leaving Nyana sleeping, unaware that her most precious blessing had just been stolen from under her roof. But the clay lamp flickered strangely as the shadow left. Its flame bent toward the empty space where the ring had rested, as though even the fire mourned the theft. And in Nyana's sleep, her brow furrowed, her lips whispering restless words, as if her spirit already knew something sacred had been disturbed. The moon rode high that night, pale and watchful, its reflection trembling on the surface of the lake. The village of Bright Waters, though alive with distant music and chatter, seemed hushed around Sephu as she slipped through the shadows. Her steps were quick but quiet, the wooden box pressed tightly against her chest. Each beat of her heart sounded louder than the drums, as though her very body wanted to betray her. She did not stop until she reached the far edge of the compound, where the trees bent low and offered shelter from prying eyes. There, under the pale light, she crouched on the earth, her hands shaking as she lifted the lid of the box again. The ring gleamed, a small circle of metal, etched with symbols that seemed to stir even in stillness. It was only a ring, she told herself. Only a piece of metal. And yet, looking upon it, she felt the same shiver one feels when standing at the mouth of a cave too deep to see. Her lips curled into a thin smile. So much fuss for a circle of metal. Tomorrow they will see it does not belong to her. Tomorrow the songs will be for me. She slipped the ring from its nest and pressed it against her skin. For a moment, it lay cold and heavy in her palm, as though it carried the weight of the mountain itself. She frowned but forced her hand steady, pushing it onto her finger. The instant the ring slid over her knuckle, a strange sensation spread through her hand. It was not the snug comfort she had expected, nor the warm rush of triumph. The ring clung to her flesh like ice, biting down without drawing blood. Her breath caught and she stared at it, willing herself to smile. But the smile refused to come. Was too heavy. Not the weight of metal, but of something unseen, an ancient heaviness that made her arm ache, as though she were lifting a jar of water that never emptied. She raised her hand toward the moonlight, expecting to admire her triumph, but instead she saw her fingers trembling, the veins dark against her skin. The etched symbols seemed to move in the light, twisting like living water, then settling back into silence. "Why does it feel like this?" she whispered. She tried to shake her hand but the weight did not shift. The ring was cold, so cold that it burned. Her first thought was to tear it off, but pride kept her from trying too soon. Perhaps it is only the blessing. Perhaps it feels different because it is meant for me now. She forced her hand still, clutching her fingers into a fist, though her heart raced faster with every moment the ring clung to her. But in her chest, a deeper unease stirred. It was as if the ring itself resisted her, as if it refused to settle into her skin, refused to recognize her claim. She turned her hand this way and that, and though the moonlight touched it, the glow seemed dimmer than before, as though the metal had lost some of its life in her grasp. A rush of anger burned through her veins. "So be it. If you will not glow for me tonight, you will tomorrow. I will not wear you now. I will wear you when she stands shamed before them all." Quickly she tugged at the band. This time it slid free without struggle, leaving her finger pale and tingling. She dropped it back into the wooden box, slamming the lid shut as if caging something wild. For a moment she sat panting, the echo of its weight still lingering in her hand. The night around her seemed to shift. The leaves rustled though no wind blew. The frogs at the riverbank fell strangely silent. Sephu looked about nervously, hugging the box closer. "It is only a ring," she muttered. "Only a ring, and tomorrow it will be mine." She buried the box beneath her shawl, hiding it against her chest as though to keep it from slipping away. Her mind whirled with plots. At dawn she would reveal the theft. She would claim Nyana had been careless, unworthy of such a treasure. She would show the ring to the elders and slip it onto her finger before them all. Then they would see. Then her mother's words would be fulfilled. With that thought she rose, moving swiftly back toward the house. The moon followed her every step, its reflection still trembling on the water, as though the lake itself knew what had been taken. And behind her, though she could not hear it, the clay lamp in Nyana's room flickered and hissed, its flame bending low as if warning of a storm that was already on its way. The first light of dawn crept softly over the village of bright waters. The lake mirrored the colors of morning, pale gold, streaked with faint pink, and the air smelled of dew and wood smoke as villagers stirred to prepare for the day's great celebration. Inside her small room, Nyana woke with a smile already blooming across her lips. For a moment she simply lay still, listening to the gentle hum of the morning. Roosters crowing, water splashing as children fetched it from the lake, the faint thrum of drums being tested in the distance. Her heart beat with anticipation. Today she would be wed. Today her life would bind with Odysseus before the eyes of ancestors and elders. She sat up, stretching her arms toward the soft light filtering through the doorway curtain. Her gaze drifted to the clay lamp beside her mat, its flame guttered into smoke during the night. Then her eyes moved to the wooden box, the vessel of her joy, the container of her sacred ring. Her smile widened as she reached for it. But when she lifted the lid, the world seemed to tilt. The box was empty. For a heartbeat, her mind refused to believe it. She blinked, tipped the box sideways, shook it gently as though the ring had somehow hidden itself in a corner. But it was bare. A hollow space where her treasure should have been. "No," her whisper cracked the silence. "No, it cannot be." She searched the mat, her hands running frantic over every fold of cloth, under the reed matting, in the shadows near the lamp. Nothing. Her breaths grew shallow. The ring, the sacred ring forged with blessings, was gone. Her voice rose, trembling. "The ring. My ring." The cry traveled faster than she intended, spilling out into the courtyard. Soon, footsteps rushed toward her chamber. Neighbors, friends, family pressed into the small space, faces crowded with confusion. "What is it, Nyana? What is wrong?" She lifted the empty box, her hands trembling. "The ring is missing." Gasps rippled through the gathering. At once, the whispers began. "The ring gone? On the wedding day?" Such things do not vanish without cause. This is a bad sign. A very bad sign. The elders were summoned swiftly, their faces grave as they stepped into the room. They examined the box, the mat, the lamp. One elder shook his head, his beard trembling. A marriage without its ring is no marriage. It is the bond that ties one family to another, one generation to the next. Without it, the union cannot proceed. The words fell like stones into Nyana's chest. She dropped to her knees, searching again, her fingers desperate, her eyes wet. Please, it must be here. It must. But no matter where she looked, the emptiness stared back at her. The villagers crowded closer, the air thick with fear. Some whispered that perhaps the ancestors had withdrawn their blessing. Others muttered of curses. Perhaps someone in this household has offended the spirits. Perhaps the bride herself was careless, unworthy of such a gift. The murmurs grew sharper, suspicion drifting like smoke. Nyana clutched her gown, her chest heaving. Shame burned hot in her veins. To be blamed for such loss on her wedding day, it was a burden she could not bear. She turned her tear-streaked face toward the elders. I swear I placed it in the box last night. I swear by the memory of my mother. The elders exchanged uneasy glances. Swearing by the memory of a mother was no small oath, but the box remained empty. In the crowd, Sephu stood silent, her eyes lowered, her lips pressed tightly together. Her hands were hidden in the folds of her shawl, the wooden box tucked safely beneath her sleeping mat at home. She played her role well, concerned stepsister, quiet witness. When others looked at her, she shook her head gently as though grieving for Nyana's misfortune. Yet inside, her heart pulsed with triumph. Let them whisper. Let them suspect. When the time comes, I will show the ring and it will be mine. But her triumph was not without unease. Her fingers still tingled where she had worn the ring the night before. The heaviness lingered, like a shadow that refused to leave. And though she had hidden the box, she had not dared touch the ring again after that strange, biting cold. Still, she held her silence, feeding on Nyana's humiliation. Meanwhile, panic spread through the household. Women rushed in and out, searching every corner of the compound. Men scoured the paths leading to the river, as if the ring had sprouted legs and fled. The air filled with tension, every whisper slicing Nyana's heart deeper. Adissa, the groom-to-be, arrived then, his face carved with worry. He pushed through the gathering until he stood before Nyana. Seeing her tear-stained cheeks, his chest tightened. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Do not weep. I know you are true. The ring will be found. But even his words, meant to soothe, could not calm the rising storm. One of the elders raised his staff, striking it against the floor. We cannot wait forever. By sunset, if the ring does not return, the wedding must be delayed. And if it is not found at all, then perhaps the union should not be. A chill swept the room. Nyana bowed her head, the shame of the entire village pressing on her shoulders. She prayed silently, begged the ancestors to show mercy, to return what was lost. But no answer came, only silence and the heavy stares of those who once adored her. Sephu watched quietly from the edge of the crowd, her heart racing with both victory and dread. The plan had begun to unfold, and her sister now carried the burden of suspicion. Yet she could not escape the feeling that the ring itself was watching her, waiting for something. And outside, the lake rippled against its banks, the morning sun trembling on its surface as though it too knew that something sacred had been disturbed, and that the day would not end as any of them expected. By midday, the entire village of Bright Waters seemed to pulse with unease. The square, usually alive with laughter and songs on wedding days, was tense and hushed. The drums had fallen silent, the flutes lay untouched. Villagers gathered in restless circles, whispering of omens and curses, eyes darting toward Nyana's family compound where the matter of the missing ring remained unsolved. Nyana herself sat quietly beneath a baobab tree, her white gown spread like a broken cloud around her. Her hands trembled in her lap, bare and aching without the sacred band. Every gaze weighed on her, every whisper felt like a stone cast at her heart. She wanted to vanish into the earth rather than endure their doubt. It was then that Sephu, her stepsister, stepped forward from the shadows of the crowd. Her shawl hung carefully over her shoulders, her face arranged in a mask of false calm. Yet her eyes gleamed with a dark light. She had decided the time had come to end the pretense. If she unveiled the ring herself, she would no longer be merely Nyana's forgotten stepsister. She would be the chosen one, the one the ancestors had truly blessed. Lifting her chin, she raised her voice so all could hear. Why do we despair as though the gods have abandoned us? Perhaps the ring has not been lost, but hidden, waiting for the rightful hand. The crowd stirred, murmurs rising. The elders fixed their stern eyes upon her. One of them asked, "And what do you mean, Sephu, daughter of Mykenna?" Slowly, with deliberate grace, she drew the wooden box from beneath her shawl. Gasps filled the air. The same box, the very one that had lain empty beside Nyanna's bed, now rested in her hands. Nyanna's breath caught in her throat. "You," she began, but her voice broke. "Behold!" Sephu cried, opening the box. Within it gleamed the sacred ring, golden and radiant even under the harsh midday sun. The sight of it silenced the crowd for a moment. The villagers leaned forward, eyes wide, some with relief, others with suspicion. "By whose favor does the ring appear in your hands?" an elder demanded. Sephu forced a sorrowful smile. "I do not know. Last night I prayed for my sister's joy, for her marriage to be strong. And this morning as I prepared myself, I found the ring hidden among my things. Perhaps the spirits placed it there, perhaps by accident or by will. But I believe it seeks me." The crowd buzzed louder, voices overlapping. Could it be? Perhaps the ancestors have spoken. Then Nyanna is not the chosen one after all. Nyanna rose to her feet, her face pale as the moon. "No. The ring is mine, given by the elders, forged with their blessing for my wedding day." But her protests were drowned out as Sephu lifted the ring high for all to see. Sunlight struck its surface, scattering bright reflections across the watching faces. With a triumphant glance at Nyanna, Sephu slid the ring onto her finger. The moment it touched her skin, a hiss split the air. Sephu gasped, jerking her hand back. The ring burned hot against her flesh, its glow turning harsh, almost red. She clenched her teeth and forced it down, determined to master it. But the band twisted violently, writhing as if alive. With a sharp crack, it slid free and clattered to the ground. The villagers cried out in shock. Sephu bent quickly, snatching it up again. "No. It is mine," she shouted, her voice breaking. She pressed it once more onto her finger, ignoring the searing pain. But the same rebellion occurred. The ring pulsed, tightened, then wrenched itself loose, skittering away across the dirt as though fleeing her touch. Mothers pulled their children back, elders muttered prayers, men exchanged fearful glances. The ring rejects her. This is no ordinary jewel, it chooses. Sephu, her face twisted with desperation, chased after it. Dust clung to her gown as she dropped to her knees, clutching it once more. She forced it onto her finger a third time, her hands shaking violently. Sweat poured down her brow. This time the ring's light flared so brightly that many shielded their eyes. A sound like rushing water filled the air. Then, with a final violent twist, the band leapt from her hand entirely and rolled toward the center of the square. It came to rest at Nyanna's bare feet. The silence that followed was thunderous. Nyanna stared down at it, her tears falling like drops of rain upon the dust. Her trembling hand reached slowly, reverently to lift it. The moment her fingers brushed its surface, the ring stilled. Its glow softened to a warm, steady light, and when she placed it on her finger, it slid into place as though it had never been gone. The villagers gasped again, but this time with wonder. Whispers turned to shouts. "It has chosen. The ancestors affirm her. Nyanna is the true bride." Sephu stumbled backward, her face pale, her hand blistered where the ring had scorched her. Rage twisted in her chest, but terror drowned it quickly. She had been exposed, not just as a thief, but as one unworthy of the sacred blessing. An elder struck his staff upon the earth, his voice carrying above the crowd. "Let this be a lesson. No hand may claim what the ancestors have already chosen. The ring belongs to Nyanna and to Nyanna alone. So it has been spoken. So it shall be." Tears streamed down Nyanna's cheeks as relief washed over her. She lifted her hand, the ring gleaming proudly on her finger. For the first time since dawn, she stood tall again, her shame lifted like a heavy cloak stripped from her shoulders. The villagers erupted into song, their drums and flutes returning to life. Joy surged through the square, though some still cast wary glances at Sephu, who stood trembling at the edge of the crowd. The celebration continued, but a shadow lingered. For while the ring had refused Sephu, her envy had not been extinguished. And envy, once rooted, seldom dies easily. The square of bright waters still echoed with the murmurs of disbelief long after the ring had leapt from Sephu's hand. Though Nyanna now wore it once more, the elders knew that such matters could not be left to whispers and shadows. In a village where tradition held the power of gods, every doubt must be burned away like mist at dawn. So they called for the trial of truth. The drums fell silent. A hush spread as the elders, 7 in number, each cloaked in deep blue robes and crowned with cowrie shells, raised their staffs. They summoned Nyanna's family into the circle, her widowed father, her stepmother, and the two stepsisters including Sephu, whose blistered hand trembled at her side. The eldest among them, a man with hair as white as salt, struck the earth with his staff. "The ring is not a trinket," he said, his voice strong though age weighed on him. "It is the blessing of the ancestors, forged in sacred fire. It must not rest on an unworthy hand. Today we shall see whom the ancestors have chosen. Let none question after this day." The crowd drew closer, breathless. One by one the women of the village were called. First came the maidens, eyes shy, hearts pounding with secret hope. Each was given the golden band. Each tried to slide it on. And for each, the ring resisted, slipping, shrinking, writhing away as though the metal itself despised false touch. Some women cried out in pain, others gasped as the ring twisted from their fingers to fall clattering into the dust. The crowd murmured louder with each rejection. Then the married women came forward. Their fingers bore the marks of daily toil, calluses from pounding grain, cracks from carrying water jars. They too tried one after another. The ring did not accept them. It burned some, slipped from others, clattered away again and again. The elders said nothing, only nodded solemnly. At last, even the elder women, the grandmothers with hair white and voices low as the wind, were invited to try. They too failed. The ring leapt from their hands as though pushed by unseen spirits. The people grew restless. "No one is chosen," some whispered. "Perhaps the ring is cursed. Perhaps the wedding is doomed." Sephu stepped forward quickly, her face pale but her voice sharp. "If no one is chosen, then it should be mine by right. I was the one who found it." A hiss of disapproval rose from the crowd. The eldest elder lifted his staff, silencing her. "You tried before the eyes of all. You were judged and the ring rejected you. Speak no more of claims you cannot prove." Sephu bit her lip until it bled but said nothing further. The square grew still as the staff struck the earth once more. "There is one more to try. The one for whom the ring was forged. Let Nyana, daughter of Lami, come forth." Nyana stepped slowly into the circle. Her bare feet pressed into the dust. She felt the weight of every gaze upon her, and her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. For a moment she hesitated. What if, even now, the ring rejected her too? What if the whispers were right and she was cursed? The eldest elder held out the ring. It gleamed as though lit from within. "Take it, child," he said. "If the ancestors have chosen you, it will return home." Nyana's trembling hand reached forward. The instant her skin brushed the golden band, a warmth spread through her palm, gentle as firelight. She lifted it, tears blurring her vision, and slid it onto her finger. This time there was no struggle. The ring slid into place smoothly as though it had been waiting for her. Its glow softened into a steady warmth, brighter than when anyone else had touched it. The crowd gasped as the light spread outward, faint but visible, shimmering like ripples across the lake. The elders bowed their heads. "It has returned," the eldest declared. "The ancestors have spoken. Nyana is the chosen bride, bearer of the sacred flame. None may dispute this truth." The crowd erupted into cheers. Drums thundered again, flutes sang, and women ululated with joy. Children danced in circles, clapping their hands. Relief washed over the people like fresh rain after drought. The doubt that had shadowed the village was gone. Nyana bowed her head, her tears falling freely, but now they were tears of joy. The warmth of the ring pulsed with her heartbeat, as though it recognized her not just as its wearer, but as its keeper. At the edge of the circle, Sephu turned away, her face twisted in bitterness. Her blistered hand throbbed, the mark of her rejection burning like fire. Though the village rejoiced, envy coiled tighter around her heart. The elders struck their staffs one final time. "The trial is ended. The truth is revealed. From this day forth, the ring belongs to Nyana, and none shall question again." And so the trial of truth became another story told at the lakeside fires, that no hand can claim what the ancestors themselves have chosen, and no envy can steal what is truly blessed. When the trial of truth ended, the ring secure upon Nyana's finger, a heavy silence fell over the square. For a heartbeat it seemed as though all sound had drained from the world. Then the murmurs began, low at first, then rising, each word sharp as a thrown stone. "It was her," a woman cried, pointing toward Sephu. "She plotted to take what was not hers." "Yes," another voice joined. "We saw her hand burn when she touched the ring. She wanted to shame her sister, on her wedding day." The crowd turned as one, their eyes burning hotter than any flame. Children who had once played near Sephu, now clung to their mother's skirts. Men who had greeted her with courtesy now folded their arms in suspicion. Even the elders fixed their stern gazes upon her, as though weighing the weight of her sin. Sephu, who had always carried herself with sly confidence, shrank under their stares. Her lips trembled and she clutched her blistered hand to her chest. The mark throbbed not only with pain, but with the knowledge that the ancestors themselves had branded her. Her stepmother pushed forward, her face pale. "It was a mistake," she said quickly, her voice quivering. "A girl's foolish envy. Surely you will not condemn her for one error?" But the villagers shook their heads. Envy was not merely a flaw, it was poison. And in a place where the ancestors walked close, such poison could not be ignored. "She stole the sacred ring," an elder said gravely. "Not a necklace, not a coin, but the very heart of our covenant. Do you not know what danger she risked? The ancestors could have turned against us all." Sephu fell to her knees. "I did not mean to anger the ancestors," she cried. Her voice cracked with desperation. I only wanted to be seen. Always she is praised, Nyana with her gentle smile, Nyana with her kind heart, Nyana with her beauty that shines like the lake. And what am I? Nothing but the shadow beside her light." Her words cut the air like knives, sharp and bitter. Some villagers frowned, others pitied, but none excused her. For envy, though born of longing, had led her to betrayal. Nyana stepped forward, the ring glowing faintly on her hand. She looked down at her stepsister with sorrow, not triumph. "Sephu," she said softly, "you are not nothing. But when you reach for what is not yours, you make yourself small. I never wished to take from you." Her kindness only deepened Sephu's shame. Tears streamed down her face and she covered it with her hands, unable to bear her sister's gaze. The elders raised their staffs. "What shall be done with one who sought to deceive the ancestors?" asked the eldest. His voice carried the weight of centuries. "In times past, such a crime called for exile." Gasps rose from the crowd. Exile was a punishment worse than death, a life torn from family, from home, from the blessings of the lake. Sephu's stepmother fell to her knees, clutching at the elder's robes. "Please," she begged, "do not cast her away. She is young. She has erred, but she may yet be mended." The elders looked to Nyana. It was not custom to give the victim power in such matters, yet the glow of the ring seemed to bend even their judgment. Nyana lowered her eyes, torn between the wound her sister had caused and the bond of family that still tugged at her heart. At last she spoke, "Let her remain. Let her live with her shame so that she may learn from it. The lake sees truth, she cannot hide from it, nor can we. That is punishment enough." The crowd murmured, some in agreement, others uneasy. But the elders nodded. "So be it," they declared. "The ancestors have chosen and the bride has spoken. Sephu shall not be cast out. She shall dwell among us, but with the mark of her envy upon her hand. Let her remember this day all her life." The villagers dispersed slowly, still whispering, still glancing at Sephu with eyes that no longer trusted. She remained kneeling in the dust, her tears darkening the earth. For though she had begged forgiveness, and though her sister had spared her, her name was forever stained. When the children played near the lake, they would speak in hushed voices of the girl who tried to steal the sacred ring. When women gossiped over their grinding stones, her shame would be their tale. And Sephu knew, as surely as the blister throbbed upon her palm, that she had been judged not only by her people, but by the ancestors who dwelt in the lake's depths. The wedding would still come, the drums would still sound, but for Sephu the music would always ring hollow. For while her sister's name would be remembered with honor, hers would be remembered with shame. Dawn rose over the village of bright waters like a golden veil. The lake shimmered, its surface calm, reflecting the pale hues of the morning sky as though the ancestors themselves were leaning close to witness what would unfold. For all the turmoil of the previous days, the theft, the trial, the shame, today was a day for celebration, a day for binding hearts and honoring promises. The square had been swept clean, its dusty earth smoothed until it looked like polished clay. Colorful cloths, dyed in deep reds and bright yellows, fluttered from wooden posts. Women carried baskets of flowers, scattering petals that glowed like embers in the morning light. The air was thick with the smell of roasted meats and yam porridge simmering in clay pots. Palm wine, sweet and sharp, was poured into gourds and placed on reed mats ready for the feast. The villagers gathered early, dressed in their finest attire. Beaded necklaces clinked softly, cowrie shells gleamed in braided hair, and drums beat a steady rhythm that called all hearts to unity. Yet more than the food or music, it was the ring upon Nyana's finger that drew every gaze. No longer was it merely a band of gold, copper, and iron. It had revealed its will before all, it had chosen its bearer. To see it gleam upon her hand was to be reminded that truth and destiny cannot be stolen. Nyana walked to the center of the square, her wedding gown woven from fine cloth dyed the color of fresh cream. Her friends had adorned her with bracelets, anklets, and a veil of delicate beads that tinkled when she moved. But none of it outshone the glow in her eyes. She carried herself not just as a bride, but as one marked by the ancestors, chosen and protected. Adissa, her betrothed, awaited her near the elders' circle. He wore a robe of deep indigo, patterned with white threads that spoke of patience and wisdom. When his eyes met Nyana's, he smiled with the quiet steadiness that had always made her trust him. The trials of the past days had only deepened his love. He had watched as she bore shame, as she stood firm, as she forgave. And now, more than ever, he knew the ancestors had blessed him in granting her as his wife. The elders raised their staffs and silence fell. The eldest elder spoke. "This ring has been tested by fire, envy, and the spirits of our ancestors. It belongs not to greed, not to deceit, but to truth. Today we bind two lives as one, under the gaze of the lake that reflects the heavens. Let no shadow come between them." Nyana and Adissa knelt side by side, hands joined. The elder touched their foreheads with a calabash of lake water. "Water to cleanse and renew," he intoned. He sprinkled ground herbs upon their clasped hands. "Earth to strengthen and root." He held a burning coal high before them. "Fire to warm and protect." And at last he lifted the ring for all to see, though it gleamed already on Nyana's hand. Metal shaped by prayer, bound by truth. May it never leave her finger until her days are done. The villagers broke into song. Women's voices rose first, weaving melodies that spoke of love and patience. Men joined with deep harmonies, their voices like thunder rolling over hills. Drums and flutes followed, until the air itself seemed to dance with sound. Children circled the bride and groom, tossing flower petals at their feet. Nyana's heart swelled until it felt too large for her chest. She glanced toward the lake, shimmering in the sunlight. For a moment she thought she saw faint ripples moving without wind, as though unseen hands stirred the water in approval. She remembered the prayers she had whispered on its banks, and tears welled in her eyes. The ancestors had heard her. They had guided her through betrayal, through loss, and had brought her here, to this moment of union. Adissa squeezed her hand gently. When she turned to him, his gaze was steady as always, yet softer, full of reverence. "You are my fire, my water, my breath," he whispered. "With you I am whole." "And you," she replied, her voice breaking with joy, "are my strength, my root, my dawn." The feast began with wild laughter and open hearts. Tables were laden with steaming dishes. Men poured palm wine until the gourds overflowed, and women passed roasted fish wrapped in plantain leaves. Children licked honey from their fingers and danced to the drums. Storytellers stood upon stones and began weaving the tale of the ring, already turning yesterday's trial into a legend to be retold for generations. Sephu sat apart, her blistered hand wrapped in cloth, her face hidden in shadow. Though her name was stained, the village did not cast her out entirely. Yet she could not bring herself to join the feasting. Every laugh, every cheer felt like a thorn in her chest. She had sought glory and found only disgrace. Still, as she watched her sister radiant in joy, a small part of her heart softened. Perhaps, in time, shame could turn to repentance. As the sun set, torches were lit from a single flame carried from Nyana's hearth. Each villager took a torch, their faces glowing in the flickering light, and together they carried them to the lakeshore. There they planted the torches into the ground so that their flames ringed the water like stars fallen to earth. Hand in hand, Nyana and Adissa stepped forward. The elders declared, "As the torches burn tonight, so shall your love burn. May no wind extinguish it, may no envy dim it, may no falsehood break it." The villagers cheered, their voices carrying across the lake, echoing back as if the ancestors themselves had joined the chorus. And so the wedding was restored, not just a union of two souls, but a victory of truth over deceit, of loyalty over envy, of destiny over despair. The ring, warm upon Nyana's finger, was no longer mere jewelry. It was a covenant, a shield, a living reminder that what is chosen by the ancestors cannot be stolen by human hands. That night, as the couple lay together for the first time as husband and wife, the torches burned until dawn, and the lake shimmered as though cradling their vows in its endless depths. Seasons turned, rains came and went, and the village of bright waters grew and thrived. Time softened many things. The faces of children lengthened into the features of adults, the laughter of the young became the steady voices of parents, and those once strong bent with age. Yet one thing did not fade. The story of the ring lived on, whispered by firesides, sung in songs, and etched into memory as a lesson too deep to be forgotten. Nyana, the bride who had once wept over her empty hand, was now a matriarch. Her hair, once black as raven feathers, was streaked with silver, but her back was still straight, her voice still strong. Children gathered around her mat in the evenings, their eyes wide, their small bodies curled like seedlings seeking warmth. She told them many tales, of hunters and rivers, of spirits and stars, but always the one they begged for most was the story of the stolen ring. "Tell us again, Mama," they would say, tugging at her wrappers. "Tell us how the ring chose you. Tell us how envy was defeated." And so she told it. Her voice carried the rhythm of the drums that had once beat at her wedding, the rise and fall of the lake's waves at dawn. She spoke of the stepsister's envy, sharp as a thorn. She spoke of the theft, the lies, and the trial before the elders. She spoke of the ring's refusal, how it had burned in the hand of greed but glowed warm for the hand of truth. Each time she told it, she paused at the same moment, holding up her hand for the children to see. And there it was still, the ring gleaming softly as if it carried its own light. Gold, copper, and iron interwoven, it had not dulled with the years. It sat upon her finger as though it had grown there, eternal, inseparable. The children gasped every time as though seeing a miracle anew. "Remember this," she told them, her eyes bright though her face was lined. "Blessings cannot be stolen. They are given by the ancestors, by the spirits, by the Creator above. No hand, no trick, no envy can take them away. To grasp at what is not yours is to invite fire into your own house." The children nodded solemnly, though some were too young to understand. Still, the weight of her words pressed into them like seeds into soil, waiting for the rains of life to awaken their meaning. Her daughters listened with particular care, their braids glistening in the firelight. "But Mama," one once asked, "what of envy? Why did your sister do what she did?" Nyana's gaze drifted to the lake, now dark under the night sky. She was silent for a time, listening to the soft rustle of reeds, the distant cry of an owl. "Envy," she said at last, "is a hunger that never fills. It whispers that joy belongs only to others, never to oneself. And the more you feed it, the sharper its teeth grow, until it devours even the heart that carries it." The children shivered at her words, pulling their mats closer. They imagined envy like a creature lurking at the edge of the forest, waiting to swallow the careless. In truth, Nyana's stepsister had lived many years after the shame of the wedding. She had married, borne children, and worked the fields, but never fully shook the shadow of her deed. Some forgave her, others never did, but her own heart carried the heaviest weight. She passed quietly one rainy season, her name remembered not for her beauty but for her envy. Even in that there was a lesson. Nyana did not tell this part with cruelty. She told it with the steadiness of one who understood that people are more than their worst choices, yet still bound by them. She wanted her children to know not just the story of triumph, but the truth of consequence. Years piled upon years. The children became adults and then parents themselves. Still, they told the tale, sometimes in the same words, sometimes with their own flourishes. The story traveled beyond the village, carried by traders, sung by travelers, woven into the songs of distant fires. But always, when told by Nyana, it carried the weight of living memory, for she bore the ring still upon her hand. On the day of her eldest granddaughter's marriage, Nyana stood once more in the village square. She walked slowly now, her steps measured, but the people bowed their heads as she passed, for she was more than a matriarch, she was living history. At the blessing, when the elders raised their staffs, Nyana lifted her hand, the ring gleaming in the sunlight. A hush fell over the crowd. For all had heard the tale, but here was the proof before their eyes, shining, unbroken, eternal. "See," she said, her voice trembling but strong, "what the ancestors give no envy can unmake. Carry this truth into your homes. Carry it into your hearts." The crowd repeated her words like a chant, and the air seemed to vibrate with their strength. That night, when the fire crackled and the songs rose high, Nyana sat in the glow of the flames, her family gathered around her. She pressed her hand against her chest, feeling the ring's steady weight. Her heart was full, not of pride but of gratitude. The lesson had outlived the pain. The story had become a shield for generations. And when at last she closed her eyes to rest, the final image that lingered in every mind was the ring, gleaming, eternal, upon her hand.